The last time I kissed my husband, I felt nothing. It was a dry, perfunctory press of lips, a habit as mindless as locking the front door. But when Jude's lips met mine in the dim hotel bar, the world exploded into color. For 10 years, I had been living in black and white, and I never even knew it. This is the story of how I tore my life apart at the seams for a woman who made me feel real, and the terrifying, glorious freedom of finally meeting the stranger who had been living inside me all along. Dive into love stories where she is the main character. Subscribe for your next favorite lesbian romance. A Crack in the Glass. Part 1. The Catalyst. The last thing Lena packed was the lie. It was a small one, folded neatly between her silk blouses and nestled beside her toiletries. "It's just a conference," she'd said to Mark last night, watching him over the rim of his wine glass. 3 days of motivational speakers and bad coffee. He'd nodded, his smile not quite reaching the tired lines around his eyes. "You'll knock 'em dead, Lee. You always do." 10 years of marriage had sanded down their edges into a smooth, predictable fit. Their Seattle home was a testament to coordinated calendars and quiet dinners. Mark, an architect who built structures meant to last centuries, seemed content with their carefully constructed life. Lena, a partner in a demanding marketing firm, felt like she was slowly disappearing into the beige wallpaper they'd chosen together. Now, buckled into seat 12A, she watched the Boeing 787 maneuver towards the runway. A nervous flutter, entirely unrelated to the impending takeoff, danced in her stomach. New Orleans. The name itself felt like a secret, a word full of heat and music and things unseen. As the plane ascended, pushing through the perpetual Seattle drizzle into a blinding blanket of cloud, Lena let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. The landscape below became a patchwork of green and gray, then vanished. She leaned her head against the cool window, closing her eyes, trying to quiet the hum of guilt. It wasn't that she didn't love Mark. She did, in the way one loves a familiar, comfortable room. But the room had begun to feel airless. A gentle tap on her shoulder startled her. "I'm so sorry to bother you," a warm, melodic voice said. "But I think the flight attendant needs to get by." Lena turned. The woman in the aisle seat, 12C, gestured apologetically towards the cart. She had auburn hair that fell in soft waves around her shoulders and eyes the color of sea glass, a startling, translucent green that seemed to capture the cabin's dim light. Lena quickly unbuckled and stood, squeezing into the space between the seats to let the attendant pass. "Thank you," the woman said, her smile easy and genuine. "I'm Jude." "Lena." She settled back into her seat, suddenly hyper-aware of her own presence. "Heading to the Big Easy for pleasure or business?" Jude asked, her tone friendly and open. "Business. A marketing summit." Jude's eyes lit up. "No kidding. Me too. Freelance graphic design. I'm hoping to schmooze with some agencies." What began as polite small talk quickly deepened. They discovered a shared love for true crime podcasts, a mutual disdain for corporate jargon, and a passionate debate over the best streaming service. Jude spoke with her hands, her gestures fluid and expressive. Lena found herself captivated, not just by the words, but by the whole performance, the way Jude's laugh seemed to start deep in her chest, the way she listened with her whole body tilted forward. Then, without warning, the plane dropped. It was a violent, stomach-lurching plunge that sent a collective gasp through the cabin. The fasten seatbelt sign chimed urgently as the aircraft shuddered, caught in a sudden pocket of turbulence. Lena's hand, gripping the armrest, was suddenly covered by another. Jude's hand was warm and firm, her fingers lacing through Lena's with an instinctual certainty. "It's okay," Jude said, her voice calm but low. "Just a little bump." Lena could only nod, her heart hammering against her ribs. But the fear was now mixed with something else, a sharp, electric awareness of the point where their skin met. She could feel the steady pulse in Jude's thumb where it rested against her wrist. The plane jostled again, and Lena held on tighter, their joined hands a solitary point of stability in the chaos. The turbulence lasted only a few minutes, but it felt like an eternity. When the plane finally smoothed out and the pilot's calm voice filled the cabin, they both let out a shaky breath. Slowly, reluctantly, they untangled their fingers. The air between them felt charged, thick with an unspoken acknowledgement. "Well," Jude said, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "That was invigorating." "I think I aged 5 years," Lena replied, her voice slightly unsteady. They exchanged a shy, knowing smile. The woman beside her was no longer just a pleasant diversion. She was a presence, a gravitational pull Lena felt powerless to resist. For the rest of the flight, their conversation was softer, more intimate. They talked about their hometowns, their dreams deferred, the subtle ache of paths not taken. Lena spoke of Mark, of their comfortable life, and felt a pang of disloyalty she couldn't explain. When the plane began its descent into New Orleans, the spell was broken, and the real world, with all its complications, rushed back in. As they taxied to the gate, Jude scribbled something on a napkin. "My hotel info," she said, handing it to Lena. "In case you get bored of motivational speakers and want to grab a drink with a motivational designer." Lena took the napkin, her fingers brushing against Jude's. "I'd like that." She tucked the napkin into her wallet like a secret, a tiny crack in the glass wall of her life. The conference was as monotonous as she'd anticipated. Lena sat through presentations on market trends and demographic analytics, her mind drifting. She found herself scanning the crowded ballroom, her heart giving a foolish little leap every time she saw a flash of auburn hair that turned out to be a stranger. That evening, the hotel bar was dimly lit, a sanctuary of soft jazz and the clink of ice in glasses. Lena nursed a gin and tonic, trying to quiet the nervous anticipation thrumming through her. She had texted Jude. "Bar at 8. The reply had been immediate. "Be there." And then she was. Sliding onto the stool next to Lena, a vision in a fitted black blazer, her hair smelling of rain and something uniquely Jude. "Fancy meeting you here," she said, her green eyes sparkling. The conversation picked up as if they'd never been apart. One drink turned into 2, then 3. The bar around them emptied, the noise fading to a distant hum. Lena felt a layer of herself, a protective shell she hadn't even known she was wearing, begin to dissolve. She was laughing, really laughing, in a way she hadn't in years. "I should probably go," she finally murmured, her voice thick with a reluctance she didn't try to hide. "Early start tomorrow." Jude's eyes held hers, the playful glint replaced by something more serious, more intense. "Do you have to?" The question hung between them, a dare. Lena shook her head, a slow, deliberate motion. Jude smiled, a beautiful, knowing curve of her lips, and laid her hand palm up on the bar between them. An invitation. Lena's breath caught. This was the precipice. She could pull back now, make an excuse, return to her room alone. She could preserve the life she had built. But the memory of Jude's hand in hers on the plane, the sound of her laughter, the way she made Lena feel seen, it was a siren's call she was powerless to resist. She placed her hand in Jude's. A shiver ran up her arm as their fingers intertwined. Jude stood, gently pulling Lena with her, and led her away from the noise, towards the bank of elevators. The silence in the elevator was profound, filled only with the hum of machinery and the sound of their breathing. Jude didn't let go of her hand. When the doors slid shut, enclosing them in the intimate space, Jude turned to her. "I've been thinking about this since you grabbed my hand on the plane," she whispered, her voice husky. Lena's breath hitched. "Me too." Jude lifted her free hand, her fingertips gently tracing the line of Lena's jaw. The touch was electric, a spark that ignited every nerve ending. Lena's eyes fluttered closed for a second. When she opened them, Jude was closer, her sea-glass eyes dark with intent. The first kiss was not tentative, but achingly soft. A question and an answer all at once. Jude's lips were warm and sure against hers. It started gently, a slow, exploring pressure that made Lena's knees feel weak. Then Jude's hand slid from her jaw into her hair, tilting her head just so, and the kiss deepened. It was a revelation, a slow, building heat that was both tender and fiercely passionate. Lena melted into it, her hands coming up to rest on Jude's hips, pulling her closer. It was a kiss that tasted of gin and tonic and possibility, a kiss that erased a decade of quiet compromise in an instant. When they finally parted, breathless, they rested their foreheads together. The elevator ding signaled their floor. Inside Lena's room, the world fell away. The door clicked shut, and they were in each other's arms again, the kiss resuming with a new, desperate urgency. Clothes were shed not in a frantic rush, but with a slow, reverent discovery. Jude's hands mapped the terrain of Lena's body as if memorizing it, her touch leaving a trail of fire. She kissed the hollow of Lena's throat, the curve of her shoulder, the soft skin of her stomach. "You're so beautiful," Jude murmured, her voice full of awe. Lena, emboldened by desire, reciprocated with equal fervor, learning the feel of Jude's strong back, the dip of her waist. She had never been with a woman before, but every movement felt instinctual, natural, as if a part of her had been waiting for this her entire life. Their bodies fit together in a way that felt profoundly right. Later, tangled in the sheets, limbs intertwined under the glow of the city lights filtering through the window, Lena felt a peace so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Jude wiped them away with a gentle thumb. "It's okay," she murmured, pulling Lena closer so her head rested on Jude's shoulder. "I've got you." In the darkness, wrapped in the scent and warmth of this near stranger, Lena whispered the truth she could no longer contain. "I've never. With a woman." Jude stilled for a moment, then pressed a soft kiss to her hair. "It doesn't matter. This is just about you and me. Right here, right now." And for that night, it was enough. Part 2, The Secret. The morning sun was an accusation. It streamed through the gaps in the curtains, striping the bed and illuminating the evidence of the night before. Jude's dress draped over a chair, 2 empty wine glasses on the nightstand. Lena woke with a start, her heart racing. The memories flooded back, vivid and technicolor. Jude was still asleep beside her, her auburn hair fanned out across the pillow, her breathing deep and even. She looked peaceful, beautiful. Guilt descended like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. Mark. The thought of her husband, thousands of miles away, probably already at his drafting table, trusting her, loving her, was a physical pain in her chest. What had she done? She had shattered the foundation of her marriage for a single night of passion. As if sensing her turmoil, Jude stirred. Her green eyes fluttered open, and when they focused on Lena, she smiled, a slow, sleepy, utterly devastating smile. "Hey, you." "Hey," Lena whispered, her voice rough. Jude reached out, tracing a finger along Lena's arm. "You okay?" Lena looked away, towards the window. The guilt is." Jude's hand stilled. "I know." She sat up, the sheet pooling around her waist. "Look, Lena. Last night was incredible. For me. But I'm a big girl. I knew the score. You don't owe me anything." "It's not about owing," Lena said, turning back to her. "It's about who I am. I'm not this person. I don't cheat on my husband." "But you did," Jude said softly, not with malice, but with a simple, stark truth. "And maybe that means something. Maybe the person you thought you were isn't the whole story." The words hung in the air. Lena felt unmoored, adrift between two selves, the loyal wife and the woman who had awakened in this hotel room. They dressed in a silence that was both awkward and intimate. As Jude fastened her bracelet, she turned to Lena. "The conference has 2 more days. We can pretend this never happened. Or, we can see what happens." Lena's phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Mark. "Hope your first day went well. Miss you. Love you." The words were like daggers. "We need to be careful," Lena said, her voice barely a whisper. Jude nodded. "Absolutely. This stays between us." She walked over and kissed Lena, a soft, lingering promise. "But just so you know, I'm hoping for option 2. Over the next 2 days, they lived in a stolen world. They were careful in public, maintaining a professional distance during conference sessions. But in the shadows, their connection deepened. Furtive touches in a crowded hallway, a secret smile across a seminar room, a frantic, breathless kiss in a deserted elevator. Each moment was a stolen jewel, precious and illicit. The night before Lena's flight home, they found themselves in a secluded courtyard garden behind the hotel. The air was heavy with the scent of jasmine and the distant sound of a saxophone. "I can't stop thinking about you," Jude murmured, her hand finding Lena's in the darkness. "This isn't just a fling for me, Lena." "It's not for me, either," Lena admitted. the confession terrifying and liberating. But I have a life, Jude. A husband. I don't know how to do this. We'll figure it out, Jude said, turning to face her. She leaned in and kissed her, a kiss full of longing and a desperate hope. It was slower than their first kiss, more profound. Jude's lips were soft and searching, and Lena felt herself falling, drowning in the sensation. Jude's hands came up to cradle Lena's face, her thumbs stroking her cheeks with a tenderness that made Lena's heart ache. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. Your room or mine? Jude whispered, her forehead resting against Lena's. That final night was different. It was slower, more intense, imbued with the bittersweet knowledge of impending separation. They made love with a quiet desperation, memorizing each curve and sigh. Afterward, as they lay tangled together, Jude spoke into the darkness. I'm not asking you to leave him. Not now. But I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. Text me. Call me. Let me know you're real. At the airport the next day, their goodbye was a quiet agony. A tight embrace, a last, quick kiss hidden by the crowd. This isn't goodbye, Jude whispered fiercely. It's just see you later. Lena could only nod, her throat too tight for words. The flight home felt like traveling back in time to a life that no longer fit. Her house in Seattle, once a sanctuary, felt like a museum of her former self. Mark greeted her with a warm hug, but when he kissed her, Lena's body stiffened. The ghost of Jude's lips was still too fresh. You seem different, Mark said, studying her over dinner. Tired? Just jet-lagged, Lena lied, the word ash in her mouth. The facade of her life had become a prison. Every conversation with Mark was layered with deception. Her body was present, but her mind was 1,000 miles away, replaying every touch, every kiss. Late at night, tucked away in her home office, the texting began. It started innocently enough. How was your day? I miss you. But it quickly escalated into something more. One night, a week after her return, her phone buzzed. It was Jude, requesting a video call. Lena's heart hammered as she accepted, closing the door softly. Jude's face filled the screen. She was in her apartment, wearing a soft-looking sweater, her hair messy. She looked beautiful and real. Hey, you, Jude said, her smile warming Lena from the inside out. They talked for over an hour. It was easier than talking to Mark. They laughed. They shared stories from their days. At one point, Jude's expression turned serious. Lena, she said, her voice soft. Do you ever think about what it would be like if we could just be together? No secrets. The question hung in the digital space between them. Lena felt a yearning so sharp it was painful. All the time, she whispered. But it's impossible. I know, Jude sighed. But a girl can dream. The affair continued its digital life, a constant, humming secret beneath the surface of Lena's marriage. The lies became more frequent, more elaborate. Working late. Girls' night out. Business trip. The weight of the double life was crushing her. She was living a split existence, and the crack in her glass world was widening into a chasm. Part 3. The Reckoning. The idea was born out of desperation. A quick business trip to Atlanta. A lie that felt both monstrous and necessary. Mark bought it with his usual, trusting ease. The reunion was a whirlwind of passion and stolen normality. For 3 days, they were just Lena and Jude. They held hands walking through Piedmont Park, shared meals in quiet restaurants, spent hours in their hotel room, talking and making love. It was a glimpse of a life that could be, and it was intoxicating. But reality has a way of intruding. On their last night, as they lay in bed, Jude propped herself up on an elbow, her expression serious. Lena, this secrecy is killing me. I love you. I think you love me. I can't keep sharing you. Lena's heart stopped. Jude. I'm not giving you an ultimatum, Jude said quickly, taking her hand. But I need to know if there's a future here. For us. The question echoed in the silent room. Lena looked at this woman who had awakened a part of her soul she never knew was sleeping. She thought of her life with Mark, safe, predictable, and utterly devoid of this kind of fiery, all-consuming connection. I love you too, Lena whispered, the words feeling both terrifying and true. I need time to figure out how to end things. Gently. Jude's eyes filled with tears of relief. She leaned in and kissed her, a kiss full of hope and promise. Okay. I'll wait. But the carefully constructed house of cards was about to collapse. Back in Seattle, Lena was a ghost in her own home. The guilt was now a constant, nauseating companion. She was distant, distracted, jumping every time her phone buzzed. Mark watched her with a growing confusion that was slowly hardening into suspicion. The end began with something absurdly simple, a phone bill. Mark, who handled their finances, noticed a cluster of repeated calls to an Atlanta area code. Calls that coincided with her business trip. He confronted her one evening in the kitchen, his face pale, the bill shaking in his hand. Lena, he said, his voice dangerously calm. Care to explain these? Her blood ran cold. She stumbled through a lie about a difficult client, her voice thin and unconvincing. Don't, he cut her off, his voice cracking. Don't lie to me. I called the number, Lena. A woman answered. She said her name was Jude. He looked at her, his eyes full of a pain so deep it seemed to swallow the light in the room. Who is she? The world tilted. There was no escape, no more lies to hide behind. The chasm had finally swallowed her whole. Mark, the words wouldn't come. She just stood there, frozen, as the life they had built together shattered at their feet. The confession, when it finally spilled out, was ugly and tear-streaked. She told him everything, the conference, the plane, the hotel bar, the affair. She didn't try to justify it. There was no justification. She just laid the brutal, humiliating truth at his feet. Mark listened in silence, his face a stony mask. When she finished, the silence in the room was heavier than any sound. A woman, he finally said, the words laced with a bewildered hurt that was worse than any anger. All these years. I never knew. I didn't know either, Lena whispered. But the excuse sounded pathetic even to her own ears. He stood up, his movements slow and deliberate, as if he were moving through water. I can't look at you right now. He walked out of the house, and the sound of the door closing was the sound of her life ending. In the days that followed, the house became a war zone of silence and tears. Mark moved into the guest room. Lawyers were mentioned. The word divorce hung in the air, a final, irrevocable verdict. Lena knew she had to see Jude one last time. To end it properly. They met in a neutral, anonymous coffee shop on the outskirts of the city. Jude looked hopeful until she saw the devastation on Lena's face. He knows, Lena said, her voice flat. Jude's face fell. Oh, Lena. I'm so sorry. But maybe this is for the best. Now we can. No, Jude, Lena interrupted gently. There is no we. Not like this. The cost, it's too high. I broke him. I broke us. I can't just walk into a new life over the rubble of the one I destroyed. Tears welled in Jude's beautiful green eyes. So that's it. After everything. I'm so sorry, Lena said, her own tears falling. What we had, it was real. It was the most real thing I've ever felt. But I have to face what I've done. Jude nodded slowly, swallowing her grief. She reached across the table and cupped Lena's face in her hands. Then let me say goodbye properly. She leaned in and kissed her. It was a kiss of heartbreak, of love and loss intertwined. It tasted of salt and regret and a future that would never be. When they parted, it was forever. Lena walked out of the coffee shop and into the grey Seattle afternoon. She was alone. Mark had asked for a divorce. Jude was gone. The two poles of her fractured existence had vanished, leaving her in an empty, desolate landscape of her own making. She had gone searching for a part of herself she felt was missing, and in the process, she had lost everything else. The crack in the glass had become a break, and then a total shattering. As she stood on the sidewalk, watching the people of Seattle rush past with their intact lives, Lena realized the painful truth. Some discoveries come with a price too steep to pay, and some awakenings lead not to dawn, but to a long, lonely twilight. She was free, but her freedom was a barren, hollow thing. The story was over, and all that remained was the silence.